Want to know how to make your LinkedIn profile a client magnet? Or how to turn those silent followers into paying clients? Today, we're diving deep into client-winning strategies with LinkedIn expert Nicole Osborne on this episode of Architecture Business Club, the weekly podcast for solo and small firm architecture practice owners just like you who want to build a profitable, future-proof architecture business that fits around their life. I'm the host, John Clayton, and if you want a business in architecture that gives you more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment, then go to architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint and download the Architecture Business Blueprint. It's the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists and architectural designers, and it's absolutely free as a gift from me. Now let's explore LinkedIn post ideas to win clients. Nicole Osborne is your LinkedIn Meister. She's here to help you knock through your inner Berlin walls and build a wunderbar LinkedIn presence that gets the right clients raising their hands. With 20 plus years in marketing and a signature blend of German efficiency, fun and infectious enthusiasm, Nicole makes your LinkedIn less of a chore and more of a Kunden magnet. And just in case you got a grade D in high school German like I did, that means client magnet. You can connect with Nicole on LinkedIn, and I'll leave a link to her profile in the show notes. Nicole, welcome to Architecture Business Club.
Oh, John, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here and to be able to talk to your community.
Oh, it's great to have you here, Nicole. Thanks for joining me. Before we get stuck into the topic, though, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about what you get up to in your free time.
Oh, in my free time? Well, I tend to spend a fair bit on the computer because most of my clients are outside the UK, so I'm a fair bit on Zoom. So in my free time, I really like to just get off the screen, off digital, and I like to keep fit just a little bit. So I live in the middle of London, or I should say Northwest London. So I bought myself a manual scooter, emphasis on manual scooter. So I actually have to do all the work. And I love nothing more than every day for half an hour to go outside and just drive around my local area just to get a bit of exercise in. And London's pavements are so wobbly. You actually have to be really mindful of not running anyone over or falling off. And that means you get a lot of headspace, and I love doing it. So yeah, this is what I really do nearly every day, and I absolutely enjoy it for the exercise, but also just to get some space for thinking and ideas. One of my favorite hobbies, having a scooter.
Sounds like a lot of fun. My thing is kayaking. It's not quite as easy to get out every day, but I do try throughout the summer to try and get out every week, and that's sort of my happy place, I suppose, where I can have some mindfulness away from the computer and my desk. So we're going to talk about LinkedIn. Specifically, we're going to talk about LinkedIn post ideas to win clients. We're going to dig into that. But first, I wanted to start by just asking about using questions in LinkedIn posts. Sometimes I see people using questions in LinkedIn posts, and I was wondering what sort of questions tend to perform well on LinkedIn.
Great question, John. So LinkedIn is very much a sociable platform. So it's the world's largest B2B social media platform. And the reason why I wanted to say this, first of all, because it's important that we engage with our audience, the kind of people we want to get noticed by. And questions are your super tool for giving your audience encouragement and permission to say something. Now, the trick with this is we are on social media to learn something new, to connect with new people, but also essentially to make ours look good. So for your community of architects, it's probably going to be so tempting to ask quite challenging questions like, oh, are you looking at your house extension and are you facing those struggles? But the problem with this sort of question is that essentially the audience member have to admit that they have a problem. So I always say, try and pick a question which is, of course, related to your post, but make it really easy and almost make it a no-brainer, John, because what happens is we on social media, we are time short. Our attention span is literally zero. So it's got to be something really easy to be able to say. And also, we want to make ourselves great. So if it's something positive, perhaps the questions that such as, have you seen a building which has really inspired you? Or have you visited a friend's house where you really loved the extension because it brought in a lot of light into the house? Or have you admired a situation where the couple made great use of space? Much easier to say something to that as opposed to admitting something, oh, my house isn't good enough. We have not enough space, or I'm worried about the building regulations. So you probably can see straight away I'm suggesting a positive spin on the question, which makes the audience look good and it's easy for them to reply. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I love that. So use questions where we can give a positive spin on things, and don't overcomplicate the questions because we don't have a lot of free headspace and we don't have a lot of time. So if it's something we can engage with easily without having to think too hard, we're more likely to get better engagement on the post. Would that be correct?
Yes, super well said. So put yourself into the audience's shoes and always think about what would be easy for them to answer, because the reality is a lot of people are lurkers on LinkedIn. Now, this is not necessarily a negative thing, but it means that they're silent, they're not likely to comment, they're not likely to ask questions back, because it takes a lot of being brave, being visible on LinkedIn. They might not be ready yet. So if you make it really easy for them to reply or to comment, they're more likely to do so in turn, which will be great for the LinkedIn algorithm, which wants to keep people engaged on the platform, wants your post to do well. So yes, it kind of fits two boxes. It makes it easy for your audience, easier for you, but also it's good for the algorithm.
Brilliant. You mentioned about lurkers there. We'll swing back around to that shortly. But before we do, I just was wondering if there was any other best practices around asking questions on LinkedIn, like regarding whether to use a short post where it's just literally the question on its own, whether to try and tie questions into a longer text post, whether we use graphics with them, whether we use there's polls as well that we can use to ask questions. What are the best practices that you've seen working recently on LinkedIn?
So it continuously evolves, which is why I love working with LinkedIn or any sort of digital marketing. It might really depend on your audience. So it's worth, whenever you are designing content, to think straight away, okay, who am I designing this for? What likely questions am I going to have? What would they perceive as value? How can I really walk in their shoes? And I would also recommend that you test a variety of content posts. So you already suggested picture, images, and a post, just a text post, a poll, which is another great way, by the way, of getting your audience to engage, because it doesn't take a lot of time for them to reply. Videos are also on the rise, or even actually going live on LinkedIn. And this content mix continuously evolves. And it's also important that you try out different things, because all members in your audience will have different preferences. So if you only stick to, let's say, text posts or only polls, it's really quite boring on LinkedIn. Now, it's not like where everyone will see every post, but you want to create that mixture to appeal to different people. So yes, the key really is to think about your audience, try out different formats. And then the final point I would like to make on this, also think about what suits you as well. Ideally, you want to find that sweet spot where it's what your audience enjoys and also what you can learn to enjoy over time in terms of content creation. So those would be my tips on that.
Some really good advice there. That, if it's something that feels so uncomfortable to do, like, for example, video or going live, that's something that a lot of people tend to struggle with. That whilst it might be something to work towards, if your whole content strategy relies on doing that, then you're less likely to be able to be consistent with it if it's something that's a bit too much of a struggle. So I like that you said about there's a variety of different ways that we can do it to ask questions, and that we can try out those different ways and see what resonates with our audience and find the sweet spot. I love that. Nicole, something that we have to do generally as business owners, and this isn't just in architecture, is in winning clients, is handling their objections. Is this something that we should talk about openly on LinkedIn, or is this something that we, do we save this for the sales calls, or actually is there some sense in talking about common customer objections openly on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so if we put ourselves into the shoes of a person who is trying to find their best local architecture or architectural bureau, what do we show to these people to help them make a decision? And surely a substantial part of that is our digital footprint. That would be Google. How easy is your practice to be found on Google? It's LinkedIn. So you want to think about, okay, so once they find me on those channels, and that's step one. So what do they need to know about me as an architect, my team, in order to help them make a better decision? Because I would imagine, if I'm an architectural bureau, for example, specializing in home extensions in London, there's a lot of building regulations, there isn't a lot of space. That is a sort of certain type of expertise. So it would make sense to focus the content and the appeal of your LinkedIn profile and your website to that kind of niche audience, because they have different needs compared to someone who is looking for like a more commercial property. So this is very important to focus on your audience. Now, when we know which audience we most like to appeal to, and you and I would call this niching, but essentially, it's about having a focus for your sales and marketing. We know already what kind of questions we get, and you rightly mentioned sales calls, but it's also putting ourselves again in those shoes. Maybe they want to learn about our process. Maybe they want to learn about how do we handle getting agreements from the council, or maybe could we even advise them neighboring disputes, all these sort of juicy bits which can come our way when we have a building project. And if you already have expertise in those areas, or that your audience is likely to be concerned about the time it takes to come up with drawings, how good the instructors are for the actual building company they're going to choose, if you have an interest in sustainable building and you have an expertise on that, all of these questions are such valuable content ideas, because you want to show the audience you want to appeal to that you have a track record and that you have expertise and that you particularly know what challenges, questions, and hopes and dreams they have. So yes, I always see Objections as something like a goldmine for content creation. So, for example, when I work with people on their LinkedIn, one objection is often, well, I've tried it before, it hasn't worked. Another objection could be, well, I don't have anything interesting to say. And another objection could be, well, we don't want to niche into working with anyone. Now, because I'm aware of that, I often talk about this in my content. This has an added benefit, actually. It also means that I'm quite approachable in my content. I show my audience, I know them, I listen to them. Because often the temptation is on LinkedIn, because everyone feels they've got to be so serious and formal, and there's such a formal network. When we pitch our content at too much of an expertise level, so we're talking at our audience and we're not opening that dialogue. But by addressing some of these questions, these real questions you get from people about the services you provide, you can pitch it at their level and you can make it really valuable for them. So absolutely, John, amazing that you brought that up. Collate those questions and address them in your content. And to weave it into a story, you maybe use it for a hook and you share some learning points, or you talk about your experience surrounding that. So yeah, great mind of content ideas.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like there would be so many different ideas for content that just to take a little bit of time and think about some of the common questions and objections that come up when you are having those early conversations with potential customers. That gives us so many options for things that we could post on LinkedIn. And I could imagine actually that if we do that in that way, surely that's going to help actually when it does come time to get on the phone with somebody, that if they've already seen several of your LinkedIn posts, that it's going to make it an easier yes for them, because you've probably handled a lot of those objections already through your content. So
absolutely.
It should save some time later when you get on the phone with them.
Yeah, and you already build that trust. When they're getting in touch, but they know that you specialize in that area, maybe in developing plans for tight spaces. So you already have that expert status, and they don't feel silly about asking you any additional questions, because the real burning questions they have, you've already made a good start on addressing them. So yeah, it works really well.
Brilliant. So we've been posting on LinkedIn. We've been asking some relevant questions to get some engagement with our audience. We've been making some posts that talk about some of the objections, and we've been handling those for our LinkedIn posts as well. So let's say we're getting to the point where we've got some people that are starting to get interested in working with us, and maybe we want to try and get them over the line and turn them from, just a follower on our LinkedIn or a connection into an actual customer. So one of the things that I've heard about is what people call FOMO, like the fear of missing out. And I'd be interested to know that how we can create some FOMO on LinkedIn around our offers and our services to, I think, again, I'll just caveat that by saying genuine FOMO, not like something artificial, because it can, sometimes people can get the wrong end of things there and think that it's not genuine. So I'm talking about how can we create some genuine FOMO about the scarcity of what we offer, because the truth is that as a small business owner or an architect that's working on their own or in a small practice, there should be some natural scarcity there anyway. Like, you've only got a finite amount of time to deliver these services. How can we get that across on LinkedIn? Remember, don't forget to download the Architecture Business Blueprint, the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists, and architectural designers. You can grab the blueprint without any charge at architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint. And if you're enjoying this episode, then please leave a 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the show.
So I think the first thing which is valuable to point out is what could we consider as leads on LinkedIn. And I want to briefly chat about that because often there's some confusion. So for example, when you know that someone is regularly commenting on your post, there's a level of interest, and it would be good to capture those people. Also, when you are creating a poll and someone votes, that's again an indication of someone potentially being interested in the service you're offering or struggling with that problem you're talking about in the poll. And then if someone reaches out to you in the DMs, in the direct messages, and, if they're really making an effort to comment on something you said, or maybe they've heard you on a podcast, or they've seen one of your local pieces and walked by the projects that, hey, we noticed you're building for, those can all be considered leads. So it's really important just to really, so people who commented, people who voted on polls, people who have searched or found me on LinkedIn, to really spread the net quite wide. Now, in terms of when creating fear of missing out, so a couple of techniques I would like to mention here. So first of all, as an architectural firm, you are often in a really good position of having photos of the completed project. So I would use these photos and I would talk about maybe there was something challenging about the site, or maybe there was a huge rush to get things created, or maybe that it really needed a lot of cooperation with local neighbours, with the local council officers. Talk about what made the project so challenging, and also give a bit of an insight into how you overcome that. Because that in itself will attract the kind of people who might have faced something similar. And when you have such a visual service and you have pictures, that works really, really, really well. Now, the second thing I like to highlight is offering something which people could download. So I remember we had an extension build 8 years ago. And, it was the first time we had an extension build with architectural drawings. And it was quite a conundrum of things we had to solve and know about. So it would have been amazing at that time to be able to download here top 10 things for how you can find the right architect for you. And in John, you and I, in our marketing language, we call this a lead magnet, so a hand raiser, giving people an opportunity to get something of value and in return give you their email address. And the same actually works on LinkedIn. So for my own business, I have a couple of hand raisers. One of them is free content ideas. And whenever I post about it, the people who want to download it, also people who need content ideas. Now, this is an area I specialize in. So again, I create FOMO by talking about it and how easy it is to implement them and how we spoke by from our audience. And it creates that fear of missing out. Now, the final point of what you said, creating that scarcity, I absolutely agree with you on that. This is not something we should make up. So, for example, in my business, when I work on one-on-one coaching with people, I generally only take 2 new clients every month. because it's a lot of work up front in terms of getting to know the business owner, getting to know what they need to do, and putting a plan together. Now, if I went on LinkedIn, so there's only one slot left, but actually there are still 2 slots left or 3 slots left. That's not genuine. And I really think about high levels of transparency, and that you need to be honest in your marketing, because what does that say about you as a person, as a business? So I would really concentrate on the fear of missing out in terms of showing off some of the successes you've had, and also really celebrating your clients. So as an architect, you can congratulate that family who are really brave in their choices, or that family who really committed to making some new choice in terms of sustainability, or really making it work for the local setting. Congratulate them on them, because celebrate their success, because that is your success. So that's a tactic you'll see on my LinkedIn account a fair bit. I show up on my clients that had successes. And I don't even have to say, yes, I played a small part on that. That's the kind of implication. So that's a lovely way of creating that fear of missing out. Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Something you mentioned earlier, you mentioned about lurkers. Now feels like a good time to talk about that. So everyone has lurkers, those people that perhaps follow our social media accounts, or maybe if you have an email list, the people that are on there that perhaps don't directly with us. So, I mean, do you have any suggestions of how we could turn our LinkedIn lurkers into leads and into customers?
It's a tough one, because when we work in the marketing industry, it's sometimes easy to forget how difficult it is actually to be visible on social media, because quality is obviously something we worked on for years. So the first tactic goes back to actually recognizing I need to make this easy for people to speak up. So when I look at my schedule, I often like to have something which drives engagement and that builds that human connection. So maybe I will talk about a detail in my own personal business journey, and I'll share some learnings along those posts. And because I don't make it out that I was born perfect, or that I'm Mrs. Perfect now, I would never want to suggest that. But I'm quite relatable, I would hope, and I am not afraid of sharing some vulnerability. So that in itself makes it easier for people to step out of lurking. And someone's, when I share something, let's say I used to have speaking gigs and not being able to sleep for 6 months, and I've worked on this, now it might be down to 2 or 3 weeks, but it's still there. I get people reaching out to me in the DMs saying, hey, Nicole, that really helped me that you said that. That was really relatable. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm facing now. So that's one way, making it really easy to connect with your posts. The other thing is, we are so driven by metrics. So how many followers do we have? How many connections? How many views? How many engagement? I always believe what really matters is if people talk about your LinkedIn presence to you in those discovery calls. Oh yes, Nicole, I've heard you talk about that. Oh yes, I've seen you on that video. That to me is a testament that, okay, so they might have not felt brave enough in that moment to reach out, and that's fair enough. A huge percentage of people are not active on social media, but there's something in it which made me very relatable to them, very memorable to them, and they've continued building that relationship with me. So it's that realization that yes, people might be lacking, but it doesn't mean they're not reading your content. So do continue working on that. The stats always change, but generally speaking, I think it's only like 1% of LinkedIn users who are actually posting once a week. So you can imagine the stats for people engaging and commenting are even less than that. So this is the world we operate in.
Wow, only 1%. That's quite a surprising figure.
Quite a surprising figure. Oh, just one final factor on which I sometimes forget to mention is I'm experimenting with my own newsletter. So often what I'll do, I'll have a newsletter about my tips, something specific area, and then I'll encourage people to comment on a related post on LinkedIn. And that for me is working really well, because suddenly it's not that barrier having to reply back to the email, but actually then just viewing my profile on LinkedIn or commenting or casting a vote on a poll. So that's another way of testing out what might work with your audience to lurk them out of lurking.
I love that. I think I'm going to steal that idea and link my email newsletter to a related LinkedIn post.
Fantastic.
So, Nicole, you must see all sorts of common mistakes that people make on LinkedIn. Could you perhaps share some of those and talk through how we can avoid them?
Yeah, fantastic question. So I, as a LinkedIn trainer now, I specialize in working with agencies, but essentially it's very similar to an architectural group professional services, right? So the first mistake I often see is that there is no strategy behind how do we show what makes us different? How do we show that in our content? And what this means is that you might be posting and you might be showing up, but because there's no point of difference, you are not making the effort to really show what makes you unique, a unique selling point, or your brand values, that you end up blending into a background. And LinkedIn is a pretty busy space. So you want to have a unique tone of voice. You want to have a unique approach to your imagery because you want to stand out and make it easy for people to connect with you. So that's number one. And when I talk about it, I often mention the orange van strategy because, in England, we have lots of white vans or white transporters, and they all look the same, right? You can't really distinguish one from the other. So if you are looking for an architect and they all are in these white vans, well, why would you reach out to a specific one? So think of an orange van there. It's completely customized wrapping on the van. It shows some beautiful diagrams and pictures of what they've done. The contact details are on there, and it's so different. So you memorize them. So you might not need an architect straight away, but they're top of mind, or your network are commenting on the post. So that's the first thing. Really have a strategy behind standing out. Then the next thing I would say is we often are so tempted because we're so worried about what we post and how others might perceive it, that we end up posting for our peers. Now, I love my peers, John. You and I, we are peers. We comment on each other's posts, and that's great. But we're not going to work together, right? I want my posts to be noticed and relevant by the kind of people either that I can work with or who have access to the kind of audience I can work with. I call these types of people collaborative. So think about, as an architect, you're essentially not posting for other architects because, they will want their own clients. You are talking to the people on LinkedIn who might be in need for an architectural service. So you need to talk about different things which are relevant for those. It also means you bring it down to their level. I often find with LinkedIn, John, like you and I, we're talking a lot now about the know-how, but that really makes a huge difference when people develop a LinkedIn mindset. Then they'll become a little bit braver and they are ignited to let some of their fears go. So if I was to talk to all my peers, I'll just talk about the know-how because I know these people are brave, they're putting themselves out there, nothing stands in their way. But for my audience, a lot of things stand in their way. And it isn't just that they don't know how LinkedIn works. It's actually because they are worried what their peers will say. Will be found out. There's a lot of imposter syndrome going on. So this is really about what I meant by not posting for my peers, but actually really talking to my audience or potential clients. And then the third thing is to just be so worried in the beginning that you never let yourself learn. Now, this might sound really harsh, John, but you and I, as regular content creators, we both know our first 10 to 100 pieces of something are not going to be very good, right? They might get no engagement whatsoever, no one reads them, no one comments, but that's okay. The important thing is to get started and to learn by the kind of feedback you're getting and to really building your LinkedIn muscle. So it's that kind of need of perfectionism and not wanting to let go of some of these fears, which really stops people in their track. So I would say that's actually the biggest one is that it's got to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, I'm not posting it. And then you don't learn and you can't test up the messaging with your audience. So yeah, hopefully those are 3 common mistakes. So we're not standing out, but thinking about your peers too much and not really posting for your audience. And we're not getting started because we're standing in our own way. Those are 3 top mistakes I see all the time.
That's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that. What would be the main thing that you'd like the listeners to take away from this conversation?
I'd like them to, first of all, have a look at their profile again and see it through the eyes of their potential clients. Are you including all of the things they need to know about you? Are you showing a bit of personality? Is your profile optimized? Do you have content which appeals to them? So that would be the first thing. Then the next thing I really like them to do is, John, really what you brought up in the beginning, which is really to think about the kind of questions they get in their discovery calls. When they didn't win a pitch or a proposal. Why was that? Is that content they could be adding to their LinkedIn routine? And then the final thing I would just actually mention, I would encourage everyone to consider, actually, do I have a LinkedIn routine which covers all the different areas? I know you and I, we talked a lot today about posting and what to post. But what about growing your network strategically? What about being active in the DMs? All of these are key components of LinkedIn success. Now, wherever you are, you can always take that next step. So I just really want people to feel encouraged that they can do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing ever is perfect when we start, but just enjoy it and let yourself learn.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Was there anything else that you wanted to add that we haven't covered in the conversation?
That's really amazing. Now, I feel you've asked me all sorts of perfect questions. So thank you so much. Yeah, I would just say if someone wants a bit more of a bespoke tip, really feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. This is my main social media platform. So yeah, always love to hear comments and additional questions and anything I can help with. Thank you.
That's brilliant. So it's time for me to ask the regular question that I ask all of the guests on the show. I've always loved travel and discovering new places. And I just wondered if you could tell me about one of your favourite places and what you love about it. And it doesn't matter if it's near or far.
This is going to be a place which is very close. I live in London and actually Bournemouth. Now, when I first came to England all these years ago, I actually came over as an au pair. And before that, I came over as a language student for a month. And I was very, very young. And I remember I did learn a lot of language and I did hang out on Bournemouth Beach a lot. And obviously I have the lower gardens. It's just a lovely seaside town, right? So I just recently went back years later and it was just so fabulous just seeing how Bournemouth has evolved and it still has also kept some of these original features. Obviously, we've got a beautiful pier, we've got the lower gardens. And so a really good sort of seaside town. There's lots of language students still around. They've got the most beautiful ice cream. And yeah, anyone looking for a destination where you can take your kids and have a bit of fun and be by the seaside, yeah, I highly recommend Bournemouth. Obviously, beautiful beaches as well and coastline. So yeah, that's my recent favourite new place.
Oh, you know what? I think I went there when I was a toddler or a baby. I don't remember any of it, but I remember my parents telling me about a family holiday there, which I think I was ill. I think I was ill for the whole time while we were there. But it is somewhere I'd like to go back and visit again now. So I shall add it to my bucket list of destinations to go and visit in the UK. Nicole, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on the show and sharing your expertise. I've really enjoyed the conversation and I'm sure that everyone in the audience will do too. Can you just remind everyone the best place to connect with you? Which I think I know where it's going to be, but I'll let you say it.
Yes, anyone in your audience who would love to reach out, maybe read some more tips or ask some more questions, please come and connect with me on LinkedIn. John is kindly going to put the link to my profile in the show notes. So Nicole Osborne on LinkedIn, and I can't wait to hear from your audience. Thank you, John.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Nicole. Next time, I'm joined by Aya Schlachter to explore the benefits of outsourcing and how you can get started. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Architecture Business Club. If you liked this episode, think other people might enjoy it, or just want to show your support for the show, then please leave a glowing 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean so much to me and makes it easier for new listeners to discover the show. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. If you want to connect with me, you can do that on most social media platforms. Just search for @Mr. John Clayton. The best place to connect with me online, though, is on LinkedIn. You can find a link to my profile in the show notes. Remember, running your architecture business doesn't have to be hard, and you don't need to do it alone. This is Architecture Business Club,